I just finished recording my light and control homework, so I'm here to do some documentation. For our first week, we were asked to plan out an analog score where instead of playing a sequence of sounds, we are playing a sequence of lights using natural light sources. And we were also asked to think of this in the context of ritual. So immediately I thought of two requirements I wanted to give myself for the homework. The first being I've been collecting sleep data since I got this Apple Watch half a year ago, and I've been wanting to play with the sleep data. And second, I wanted to use materials I already had. I didn't want to go out and buy brand new things, or if I did have to buy something, I wanted it to be something small enough that it won't clutter my apartment or that I can use again in the future. So the very first idea I had was lighting up a tea candle for every hour that I was asleep. The metaphor being I'm recharging as I'm sleeping, or something along the lines of getting a wick and measuring out the wick equivalent to the length of time I was asleep and burning through that wick. Not sure what that metaphor would have been for sleep. But then I started to read one of the assigned readings. I'm going to butcher this name. Bartosianovsky's article on lights and shadows. And I was particularly inspired by his emphasis on not only the light source and the different angles that we can direct the light source from, but also the interplay of light with shadow. So I started searching light art on Pinterest, and I came across Chris Wood's wall panels, and I found them so beautiful, the way the different colors were scattering from each individual panel. And I think he's using dichroic glass panels, which, I don't have on hand. But I do have cellophane from a previous project. So I was like, that's pretty close. And I started kind of noodling with the idea of putting cellophane into containers, and I switched my idea from visualizing sleeping hours to visualizing my waking hours, because I kind of liked the idea of, now that I was putting cellophane under sunlight, of showing the number of hours I was awake instead. So I came up with this idea of 7 containers, one for each day of the week. And for every waking hour, I will add a piece of cellophane into that container. On top of that, I decided to add 2 details. I wanted to distinguish which hours were daytime and which hours were nighttime. So I looked up the general sunrise and sunset times in New York City. First, I was using this dichroic cellophane for daytime, and I cut these light filters, also from previous project. I cut these into small, almost confetti shapes, but it ended up being that these light filters didn't actually cast enough of a shadow, so I ended up switching the idea from this dichroic cellophane to represent daytime and this regular light blue cellophane to represent nighttime. Another detail I decided to add to give variation in my score is I decided to place each cellophane in the container in the order from the day of the week that I woke up earliest to latest. And as soon as the sun went down, I switched to using the nighttime cellophane. And then the order became the day I went to sleep the earliest to the day of the week that I went to sleep the latest. Then I mapped each waking hour to 1 minute. So I executed the score over a span of 19 minutes. Turns out I was awake for 117 hours the past week, and that meant I needed the same amount of cellophane to put into my clear containers. So I got working. cutting 130 pieces of cellophane. Once I got that going, the trickiest part was actually the sunlight. It's currently January. This past weekend, when I was working on this homework, we had a snowstorm. So I didn't have any sunlight during Friday or Saturday. So I had to wait until Sunday. Sunday has some beautiful sunlight. So I got going with my first attempt around noon of Sunday, and that looked pretty good. But the pieces that I used in my first attempt for nighttime, which was confetti versions of this light filter, they unfortunately didn't cast too much shadow. So then I decided to give it another attempt around 4:30 p.m. because I thought the golden hour elongated shadows might be really interesting. But unfortunately, the sun started going down pretty quickly as soon as I started. So then today, Monday, around 3:30 in the afternoon, I did my third attempt, which thankfully was some beautiful, perfect afternoon sun. And because of the afternoon sun, I was also able to move the setup from the bedroom into the living room where I had enough room to shoot the video straight on. And additionally, I was able to get some really interesting shadow being cast behind the containers, but also because of the clear plastic, there was some interesting reflection in front of the containers. And by the third attempt, I had pretty much almost memorized the order that I was supposed to put the cellophane in. So each act of the actual placement really did feel like a meditative ritual that I was enjoying. It's also my favorite attempt because you can more clearly see the shadow cast by my arm while I'm placing the cellophane in the container, and it really makes me feel like I'm part of the artwork. The only drawback to all of these attempts and this idea in general is that when I was conceptualizing the idea, one of the commentary I wanted to make was how we as a society tend to view people that are early risers as super organized and disciplined and hardworking, and those that sleep in as lazy. And that's a stereotype that I've always had a big issue with. I like to sleep late because I like working and coding late into the night, and I get up later. But that stereotype has always given me an imposter syndrome. So I wanted to somehow incorporate that into this idea, but I just couldn't figure out how to do it. So that's my one thing I would like to improve on if I ever iterate on this idea in the future. But here is my final version.